Everybody has a story to tell, and there was a time when we would share those stories around the kitchen table, laughing, telling jokes, talking about the events of the day. Heated debates, tragic loss, living life. The kitchen table is where we share our lives. So come, sit with me and my friends as conversation unfolds across the kitchen table. In this episode, I'd love to introduce you to my dear friend Dawn. I met Dawn several years ago while I was working as a video producer for a large church. Dawn is a very interesting man and a personal inspiration. I have looked to him as a mentor over the years. Being such a good and sympathetic listener, it would make sense that he is part of the care and recovery team. His passion lies in helping those in the clutches of addiction. In the more twilight years of his life, he continues to learn and grow, constantly reading, pursuing a doctorate, and he even took piano lessons from me. I'd like for you to get to know Dawn a little better as we discuss some rather heavy topics and some lighter stories as well, across the kitchen table. Stories. Whether it is something historical or something inspirational or different stuff that people, struggle with. I know we've talked about a lot of those sort of things before.
Yes, we have.
But I give the opportunity for my guests to speak. I try not to speak as much.
I know, and I'm not the speaker. You're the speaker. See, I'm not the conversationalist. You are.
It depends.
But I'm sure there's something inside.
I'm sure you got tons of nuggets of wisdom that you can drop.
I don't know about that.
No?
Nuggets of wisdom. Yeah, just most of it's from life experiences, right?
Yeah,
that's where,
and that's good.
That's where, yeah. But see, most of my life experiences are the 42 years I spent in a brown truck, right? And that's where most of my life experiences. However, they're one of there were pivotal moments in life, as we all know. And they're probably most people have them, those pivotals, 42 years, but it's true. But when you get married. When you change your life, if we want to say becoming a Christian, those are pivotal moments in my life.
Yeah.
So, but, my whole life is based on all that. It is.
Okay, well, what about that? I don't know if I ever heard, because you said pivotal points, you said about becoming a Christian. When was that for you?
That was a process.
Yeah.
Okay,
so let's hear this story.
Oh my gosh, that's a long story. It's a long story. Probably goes back to where I was 3 or 4 years old. Mm-hmm. And the thing that sticks out in your mind when you're a little kid, and my dad was a Navy Marine guy. He's a corpsman, nice guy, very level-headed guy. But he was analytical. He was a man. He was an engineer. But I never forget the times when he used to kneel down when we were kids and pray before bedtime.
Oh, huh.
That still sticks in my mind. And we used to go to church, good Catholic people, every Sunday. Yeah. Went to Catholic school for 6 years. And, you just did that. But those are the pivotal moments I remember way back when. Then you go to middle school, everything, you go to public school, you get exposed to all the world in public school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty challenging. And then the next pivotal moment, probably when I was 15, when I went to the workforce, worked at a restaurant, Carbone's Restaurant in Crabtree. And that was an Italian restaurant, but you learn a lot about life.
In a restaurant.
You do. And 15 years old, emotionally, socially, you don't know how to handle that.
Yeah, you were probably being shit on by everybody.
Yeah. It was
the young guy, make him do all the stupid stuff.
Well, it wasn't that bad. No. Okay. I started out as a busboy.
Okay.
But you learn how, I'm going to say the word, how bad people are.
I will definitely agree with you.
You saw all the adulterous relationships that were going on. Things like that. You saw the alcoholism. Uh-huh. You saw the meanness of people. You saw also the goodness of people.
Yeah, sometimes. I found that more rare in my experience.
Yeah. But then I started to drink.
Yeah.
Because
that's that job.
That's right. That's the job. And you go out at night, used to stay out. Mm-hmm. 15, 16, I got my license, 16. My dad gave my brother and I a car, 1966 Volvo.
Yeah.
A 4-speed, dirty gray, metallic, but that's what we drove.
Freedom,
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot there. So my brother eventually wrecked the car, so it was gone. Yeah, but that was another story. And we both drank a lot. I drank a lot, went out a lot. I got to the point where I used to stay out at night. I'd come home at 7 a.m.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a long
Used to go to the clubs. And I was, 18?
Yeah.
Used to do that stuff. Not a good thing.
No.
But at the same time, there was a knocking on my door about God. And that, that's where God was like knocking, Revelation, I'm knocking, I'm knocking. But how did he knock? I remember when I worked at UPS, I just started UPS. So I worked Carbone's full-time, worked UPS part-time, went to school full-time. Okay. So I had a full plate. Sometimes you get tired of hearing this stuff, right?
No.
So I remember, what was that? It was 1977, and I took a girl out from work. It was like 3 in the morning. We go out, and we're drinking, and I'm looking at her, and I'm talking to her about how can I say, the things that are important in life. And I was saying to her, what's really important? What are we doing here? And I almost philosophical. That was the last time we ever went out together, because she probably thought I was an airhead.
She didn't want it.
She didn't want to hear that. Yeah. And but I was starting to look. Well, there's got to be more than this drinking stuff. And then, I worked with a guy that was a Jehovah's Witness, and we worked on the belt. Did you ever work at UPS?
Not UPS, okay. It was FedEx.
Yeah, so we worked in the sort facility, huge sort facility, and we did the pickoff together. Okay. We were always together. We worked hours together at night, and he used to tell me all about Jehovah's Witness, about all this stuff, and he even gave me a green New Living Translation, whatever they called it, Bible. Yeah. And I thought, this is tremendous, and I was starting to, God, you're speaking to me, right? After that was December 20th, 1977. My sister committed suicide. And it was a terrible thing. It was a horrible thing. She made her first attempt on the first day I started work, May 24th, 1977. So it was 6 months she went through turmoil. She eventually ended her life. And I remember that night when I had the New Living Translation Bible, I opened it up in our den. I was all by myself. And I said, I need help here. And there was no help. There was no help there. And I remember that. It was this thing, pivotal moments in life. And I said to Dan, I came back with Dan, the guy that was Jehovah's Witness. I said, Dan, this isn't for me. And I just knew that wasn't for me. And it's almost like I left that, and we eventually quit working together, and I had to continue my journey somewhere else. So I still drank, still ran, still doing with bad women. And then I used to do the occult stuff, like doing the witchcraft and trying to figure all that out, and thinking I knew something when I knew absolutely nothing. And then there were certain people I used to hang around with, adults. And the one girl was an alcoholic. And they were a husband and wife. They were married. And they said, hey, I got saved. I'm thinking, what do you mean you got saved? What is this nonsense?
Saved from what?
Saved from what? I was like, I'm a good heathen. Yeah. And I remember I used to, on occasion, turn Billy Graham on TV. And I think it resonated nothing with me. I'd watch him for 2 minutes and think, what is this baloney? It was nothing. But yet God was saying, and I remember at St. James Church in New Alexandria in a June morning. I used to go to church all by myself. Yeah. And my dad used to say, he would say, well, I don't care what religion you are, just do something. But I stayed with the Catholic Church. I went all by myself for years. And I remember one time, were you ever a Catholic?
No.
Okay, the Catholic at communion, they say the words of one of the guys in the Gospel of Luke who wanted his daughter healed. It wasn't Jairus. Yes, it was. He said, Lord, I'm not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed. It was a sunny June morning. You're one of the few people I tell this story to. Sunny June morning, and I said to God, I want to be healed, but I'm not healed. And I remember it struck a knife right in the middle of my heart. And I wasn't healed. And I said, I'm not. And it was like I was starting again, journeying. I was journeying. And that's when I got my friends. The girl said I was saved. And that resonated a little bit. And they were like, this is tremendous. I'm thinking, what the heck? And then they said there was another girl who was with them who I didn't really know. And they said, she used to be a witch. She got saved. I'm thinking, what is this? So I started driving at UPS 1978. My first supervisor was a Christian. And he rode with me my first day driving in a couple of days. He was totally inept as a driver or as a supervisor.
Terrible.
He was terrible. but he was a Christian.
Yeah.
And his only thing, he was trying to evangelize me. Don, you need to be saved. And I remember I was smoking. I'd blow smoke at him. I said, you're full of shit. And and what are you talking about? But God sent him to me to tell me about this Christianity. And then my friends are telling me they're getting saved, right? And there's a confluence of all these voices coming together. And I'm tired of drinking. I'm tired of running with the bad women. And then, what was it? It was in April of 1979. I was in my truck delivering a package on George Street. You remember, I've told this once here. Baggage on George Street in Greensburg. Yeah. And I walked up to the door, and the guy came to the door, and it was an old college acquaintance, John Berg. And John, we say, hey, how are you? Goodbye. Nice to see you. And I'm walking back to my truck, and a voice says to me, he's going to say something. And I'm walking back. I remember down the sidewalk. It was a nice spring day. He kept saying, he's going to say something. And he said, hey, Don. And I stopped and I turned around. He says, I'm going to ask you a question. And I said very strongly, I said, I want to know why in the hell you're asking me a question. And he started like mumbling. He was scared because I was angry. I want to know. I said, I want to know why you're asking me something. Yeah. He said, do you fellowship anywhere? And I heard that word fellowship from Christians. And I says, why are you asking me this? He says, because I live in Las Vegas. I'm here to see my mom. And I told God before I'd leave here that I would talk to one person about him. And I said, he said to me, you're the person. Honestly, that's all I needed. I knew God was calling me that day to come aboard this Christianity. I know it sounds like it wasn't fireworks in the sky, but for me, it was God saying, I want you. That's what he said. I want you. Yeah. That was the start of my Christian journey. After that, I still dated girls, but I remember one girl, I won't name her, her name was Ann. And I remember I'd go out with girls, and I remember Ann was like, she wanted sex. And I said, I can't do this. As a vibrant, 20-year-old, whatever I was, I can't do this. Yeah. But God was changing me. Yeah. I quit drinking because I used to drink like a pig. I used to steal. I was a thief. I was a criminal. Yeah. And everything changed. I went to the bar one last time in Youngwood with my brother and another guy. And I said, I can't be here. I'm done here. Yeah. And I remember, people have trouble quitting drink. I quit it all. It was all. But it was a God moment. And then I was on a mission. So that's my story. I rarely tell that story because I don't like to bore people with my story.
Oh no,
you know what I mean?
You're just not boring
It's my
people.
story too.
It is your story.
It's mine. Yeah.
I mean, that's what's cool about it. I mean, if we talk about like evangelizing or talk about like sharing your story and stuff like that, we're called to witness.
I know we are.
We're not called to prosecute.
Yes.
We're not called to defend.
I agree.
We're not called to be the judge or the jury.
Just tell my story. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the telling of your story, it can resonate with somebody. Mm-hmm.
But God's on the move. Yeah. Just like in your heart. You're a Christian, man. Same way. Yeah. And from there, everything went. Yeah. And it's still a journey. We journey with Jesus. I read that book it was a Christian book, Journey with Jesus by, it was a Michael Glazier publication. It was an excellent book, taken from the Gospel of Mark, where Jesus says one of the first things he does is in the sea of shores of the Sea of Galilee, he invites people to come journey with me. And he invites every one of us to come journey with him. Yeah. And it's the greatest journey of your life. Yeah. Yeah, this should be on a Billy Graham Evangelistic Society, right?
Well,
just us.
That's the thing too. I think that we all have to share our story because Billy Graham was out there evangelizing. Didn't mean a thing to you. It wasn't until certain circumstances and certain things. This person said something. This person said something. God was speaking to you how you needed to be spoken to.
Right, exactly. There was a book by, of course, I always forget these names. Unbroken, by Lauren. I forget her last name. Did you ever read the book? Mm-mm. It was probably, I would put it as one of the best books I've ever written about a guy who they made a movie out of him with Angela Jolie. Forgive me, I'm
Angelina Jolie.
Angelina Jolie, whatever her name is. And she helped produce the movie.
Okay.
And the guy's, I forget his name. I read the book a couple years ago, but it's about him. During World War II, he was I guess he was in the Army, Air Force, but he did patrols over the Pacific Ocean. And he was shot down. And he knew he was going down. And this is only one element of the story. When he was under the water, he said, I felt cables around my neck. I couldn't get out. And he said, all of a sudden, I'm free and I'm out of the water. But subsequently, he was captured. The Japanese tortured him mercilessly. He actually was an Olympian during the Berlin Olympics. He participated in them. Do you remember the story?
Yeah, I remember about the Berlin Olympics.
Yeah, and he was part of that. And he was a runner. So those who held him in the camp knew he was an Olympian and used to harass him and make him run and all this stuff and just see how strong you are and this and that. He was completely decimated as a man.
Yeah.
And he came back a broken man after the war. And he survived, but his whole intent after the war was to get back at the bird, was the guy who was the perpetrator of the war crimes. And to get back at the bird, and he was dead set. He actually went back to Japan in order to kill that man, and they couldn't find him. And he came back and he found a beautiful woman, and but he drank like a pig. He had the terror nightmares all the time. His whole life was consumed with getting back at the bird. And his wife, they lived in an apartment, and the marriage was disintegrating. Now I'm telling somebody else's story, but I'm getting to a point. His marriage was disintegrating. But his wife was spoken to by another couple and said, Billy Graham's in town in Los Angeles. Come and see him. And when you know it, his wife becomes saved at a Billy Graham revival, 1948 in Los Angeles, California. Billy Graham had just got down from a crusade in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And it was a failure. And they said he was heckled by a man in the choir. And it was a complete catastrophe in Altoona. He came out here because he felt God sent him in Los Angeles. And things were just steady. There was nothing going on until William Randolph Hearst from the Hearst organization said to his editor, puff him, quote, puff him, Billy Graham. And as soon as they put him in the press, people came, thousands of people. And one of those was his wife, Cindy. I think his name Chuck. His wife, Cindy, came. The guy who's the protagonist of our story. Cindy came and she got saved. She kept tugging, but come and hear him. And Billy would speak to things of the world, and she enticed her husband. He speaks of things of science, and the husband said, "Oh, if I'm going to hear about that." And he came to a Billy Graham crusade, and when it was time for the invitation, he pulls his wife, said, "We're out of here." And then subsequently she talked him into coming again. And eventually Billy Graham spoke, and the man said, he spoke to me. But the words of Billy Graham, if I read that in that book, I feel that Billy's speaking to me. I can feel the power of God in those words. And they turned that man's life around and completely changed him. He evidently, afterwards, he actually went back to Japan and asked and gave forgiveness to those who were his captors. Tremendous story. You ought to read it. Unbroken.
Unbroken, okay.
Lauren Hillebrand, that's her name, Hillebrand.
Okay.
But it talks about the power of the gospel, Billy Graham, and how it changed that man's life, changed my life, changed your life. So that's what pivotal moments in my life were my experience with Christ, and it's still ongoing.
Well, so it's interesting because with Trent, we talked a lot about Christianity, about God, and I said to him, so. And this might be a question for you then. I said, there may be a lot of people that listen to this that have never heard of those things or don't want to hear of those things or have heard differing things. I think there's a lot of people who might have had a brush with church and they take away whatever weird little thing that they start to think in their head of like, oh, this is what it means to be Christian.
Right.
You know? Like the Catholic Church, I think, is pretty good for perpetuating the ritual, the things you do, but not the relationship that you have. So, all of that being said, see, I get too wordy in my questions.
No, it's okay. I like it.
I go on and on.
It's okay.
Is that so? If if you were saying all of this stuff to a younger person who is, kind of searching for things but has never heard any of this stuff, like how do you approach that? How do you have conversations with people? You don't just go straight up and say you need Jesus.
No, I don't.
So how do you approach that?
Okay, so let me say, it goes back to comedy and this. Bobby, my guy, I work with a guy at work. Yeah, I work with Bobby. Bobby used to always say to me, the only reason I want to go to church, somebody wants me to go to church, is because they want to pass the offering plate. And he knew I was a minister, and he always used to tease me, all you want is my money, all you want is my money. And I always liked George Carlin, one of the great comedians.
Yeah.
I liked his he did a spiel on churches, and he said, Our Lady of Perpetual Motion. And that always struck me as funny. Yeah. But, and seriously, on Christopher Hitchens, he was a good atheist. Mm-hmm. I like Christopher Hitchens. I read a lot about him. He died of cancer some years ago. But he talked about how religion, not Christianity itself, but religion is an evil in society almost. And he appeals to like the Muslims that would, they just want to chop your heads off. And, the Hindus have all these religions and they make you sacrifice all these things. And, and Christians, the Crusades, how that decimated the Muslim population in the Mideast. And if we're going to look at religion that way, all it has been a complete fiasco for humanity. It's done more harm. So Christopher Hitchens' argument is that way. And so what I want to say to a person that is looking and never heard of these things, it's like Moody Blues has a song. Listen to the voice that's in your heart, and the voice is yours. And it's a great song. Okay. But, there's a voice that wants to talk to you. And to me, if we quiet ourselves and listen, God wants to talk to us. And go beyond the evil of religion and go to the heart of what true religion is, and that's meeting with God. Yeah. And part of what I do for a living is I work with people that recover in addiction. And they always appeal to the big book, which is the AA Big Book. And if you read the AA Big Book, no matter who you are, it was written for alcoholics, but it appeals to this higher power, they call it. Mm-hmm. They really don't call it God, but at times they do. But they say, if you want change in your life, let the higher power do something and look for the spiritual life that's there. And too many of us, we live in the physical realm only. Physical realm is great. I love it. I live there. But then there's also the spiritual realm, the inside of you. That's the book of Ecclesiastes say there's a part of me that's looking for God. Every human, there's a hole in my heart. Yeah. And that's why, all these things come together. The AA Big Book, it's phenomenal. People that are lost, it's really the only thing that people could find to help an alcoholic back in the 1930s, and even to this day. But the 12 steps, based on the Oxford group, which was based on a little guy from Allentown, Pennsylvania, that went over to England and met God, and this all came together and formed the Oxford group, the 4: purity, honesty, truthfulness, and something else, which is the basis of the AA program, which is the basis of the 12 steps, which is the basis of finding God. Yeah. And they don't say it outright, but they say you have to have a spiritual encounter if you want to become new. Yeah. So, all those little intangibles, but you got to lay down some things, the physicality, and listen for the voice of God. Well, that's a lot said there, but
that was good. Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. So where does that leave you? Speechless. It's hard to believe.
I don't know what the next question would be. Then.
Yeah. So what's the next question? Is if everybody's on a journey and God wants everybody. I believe God wants everybody's heart. I don't care who you are. Yeah. The worst criminal in the world, God wants to talk to your heart, and He does. Yeah. But whether they listen to Him or not. Then there's forces of evil that work against that.
Yeah, and the listening and the following it, the obeying, the going with the leading. I think that can be tough. I think that can be scary though too for people having this, still small voice or still small leading, and knowing whether or not that it's a leading towards something good or something bad. I mean, if you don't have experience with kind of discerning those sort of things. I mean, let's say somebody's lived their life where that small voice not the God small voice, but there is another small voice that has led them into,
bad
destructive things.
Yeah.
So then, each person's experience is going to be different. I think that's why it's going to be tough to talk about spiritual things even in a church setting because it is so individualistic. You can't say, well, this is how God always appears to people, or you can't say, well, this is how God always speaks to people.
So how about some questions? so maybe some standards, or check marks? Is it good? Mm-hmm. First thing, is it a good voice? Is it asking you to do good things or destructive things? Does it bring peace or does it bring chaos? So maybe those are some of the things you need to ask, because I believe there's bad voices. Yeah. We've all known people that have bad voices.
Yeah.
And I knew one guy, and he was assured that Marie Osmond wanted to date with him because these voices were telling him to go find Marie Osmond because she wants to date you. I don't think that's God. I just don't.
That's just delusions.
That's delusions, yeah. And those voices of delusion. But I don't think God does that. Even though God, I'm going to use this word, and it's a very strong word. God sometimes is capricious in nature.
Okay.
Like when you see the story of Jacob and Esau. Why in the world do you choose Jacob, the scoundrel, the schemer, the supplanter, and make him the head of a nation?
Yeah.
God, why would you do that when you're supposed to be the good and gentle Jesus that we all know that carries the lamb on your little shoulder? And here you are, God, you're doing these things?
Yeah.
And why would you smite the Egyptians just to prove your name in Egypt?
Yeah.
Things like that. So we can say the capricious nature of God may not correspond to the way I want him to be. But yet I firmly believe God always has the best in mind.
Yeah.
But who am I to know that? So I'm a little aside there.
Yeah.
I'm giving you more than what you bargained for?
No, you're giving me all kinds of good stuff. It's not up to me whether it's entertaining or informational.
Yeah.
People will like it or not like it.
Yeah.
Like me personally, I don't like the sound of my own voice, so going through and having to edit this is kind of tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
And I won't listen back to it. Once it's edited and out there, I'm going to say, nope, I ain't listening to it.
I understand. Yeah, because I'm the same way. None of us like the sound of our voice.
Yeah, I like hearing people's stories, and I think we can learn so much from people's stories. And I think when we share some of those really deep, dark stories, we realize we're not alone. I don't know if I was gonna ask that or necessarily we were gonna go there, but like when you said about the AA meetings or the 12 steps and this journey towards wholeness, somewhere in there, I think it's one of the steps, but would be to be in community, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's an exact step, but community is integral to the AA program, to any recovery program.
Well, because that kind of ties in with the Christian thing and having those conversations. I mean, there are people searching. I think the world is really hurting right now for Jesus, but we as the church have done such a poor job of representing him throughout the years that I would say on the mass scale, most people think of God as a smiter. They think of God as... or not even that God doesn't care or God doesn't listen or whatever sort of things. And, I think bridging that gap, and then also the control factor that happens in mainline denominations or even smaller churches or whatever, where it now becomes I'm controlling you and telling you how to live your life thing.
I know.
And if you don't live the way I think you should be living, then, God doesn't like you as much, or God's not going to... There's one for you. How about that heresy that gets perpetuated? If you're not within God's will, that he's not going to bless you.
Yeah.
Well, then how are you deciding what God's will is?
Who makes that decision?
I mean, you were just saying earlier about Jacob.
Right.
Maybe God's will was for him to be a scoundrel.
I know, obviously it was.
But if you say that kind of stuff in a church, you start to undermine the power of a church to have moral authority. And then it's like, whoa, back down. We can't say that God's, even the church wants to keep God in the box. And say, well, this is how this is interpreted, and this is how this is interpreted, and this isn't how God would actually respond. Not the God I know. The God I know created the universe. So who am I to tell him anything about how he wants to do things? And even if he's done things a certain way in the past, I mean, if we look at the Bible, see, these are the conversations that need to be had with people everywhere, anywhere. Is if you don't own your own faith for yourself, if you don't struggle with these tough questions, if you don't doubt the existence of God, if you don't doubt God's love for you, then how are you ever going to actually believe those things without going through these processes? But there's a lot of people that, they read the Hallmark card that says this is how a Christian's supposed to be. Right. They have their nice little phrases that they go to, and it's like, yeah, but do you truly believe it? And you can't. I don't think you can truly believe it without struggling, without wrestling with it. It's safe for them.
They want a safe God.
Yeah,
they don't want a God who's capricious. No, he's not safe.
He is. Here's a heretical thing. What if the Big Bang was and is actually God? I mean, nobody was there. No. But science wants to point one way. Religion seems to want to point the other way, and it's like, who are we to know what the actual truth of is what happened? We know that in the beginning God created, at least from our perspective, from the book that we're given. Right. But even there, you can start going into interpretations of the original Hebrew and how that society was, how they would pass on oral tradition. Right. Was a day a single day, or was a day 1,000 years?
And do those things matter?
They don't. But those are the things that a lot of people will latch on to in both sides, and they'll make it about that.
I know.
Instead of about making it about relationship.
Exactly. I'm with you on that. Too many people peck. So many people, when you talk to them about the scriptures as a whole, one of the first things they'll point out is, how could God let all those people get killed when the Israelites came in the land? God said, kill them all. Yeah. Women, mothers, children, how could God do that?
Yeah.
But he did. Yeah. And of course we try to sanitize it by saying it was all the evil in the land. God wanted to get rid of all the evil. Maybe it was.
Yeah.
But it seems pretty mean to me, right?
But yeah. But so, I mean, like with telling these stories, you told us your journey story, and that's more impactful than talking philosophical stuff.
I know.
Because it's you, Dawn.
Right, that's
who
me.
Went through this. And I also found this too. I think it's easier for people in a more, twilight stages of life, however I want to put that. People over...
You mean like me?
Yeah, people over a certain age, I think, are more accepting of their stories and not afraid to tell their stories.
Right.
But younger people just don't want to listen to them at that point.
No, they don't. They don't. No.
But then when you're younger, you don't tell your story, or you don't tell you tell things, but you don't tell your story. I mean, I have friends, and I know a lot of people. You hit on the suicide thing, and sometimes you get into conversations with people, and you don't necessarily want to talk about it. It's either that it's not polite conversation, or there are people that it's never crossed their mind. And I don't understand that, because it's crossed my mind a lot of different times.
You mean suicide? Right.
And I think the difficulty in talking about it is you don't want to sound melodramatic. You don't want people to start looking at you differently, or coddling you, or treating you in a way of like, are you okay today? Are you okay today?
I hate that.
Just because I've had the thoughts, just because I told you that I had the thoughts, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen. I appreciate people's concern, but it's a tough thing, I think, to broach that subject. So sometimes hearing it third hand is almost better too, because it's like, oh, okay, I know a story of a guy. It's not somebody saying to you directly like, oh, you have so much to live for. Don't give me that shit.
Yeah.
That's not helping anybody.
Right.
So it's interesting, because last night I was over at a friend's house, and there's some personal stuff that's happening at the moment. But so I was telling him, catching him up on this stuff, and I said it's been a tough 24 hours, because I understand what had happened to me, and I can look at it and comprehend it, but that doesn't mean my feelings and my emotions are in sync with that. Oh, it hurts. And then when you're laying there in those dark hours, and this is the way I kind of said it to my friend, as I said, I couldn't sleep. I was laying on the couch, and I said, I have this bundle of rope that sometimes I tie down stuff in the back of the truck. And I said, so it was in the back of the truck, and it had gotten wet, so I had put it out on the porch to dry off. And I said, and as I was laying there in bed in this kind of, in this turmoil state, that I just kept thinking about that rope. And then I kind of looked over at him, and I said, I can tie it. I know how to tie a noose, right? And he goes, I know. He said, but you also know that you have people to call. He said, you need to call me. And I said, I know.
Yeah.
I know. But it still doesn't stop, the thoughts or the wonderings. And maybe not everybody has that. But again, like sharing this story, it's not something I want to tell a lot of people.
No.
It's not something I'm proud of, to have those sort of thoughts.
It's part of the human condition.
Yeah.
I think everyone has thoughts of, it's some parts of their life. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, maybe that's even to just say it helps to heal it. Just to admit, I'm not Superman. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Again, reversing back to step one of AA, I am powerless over my addiction. I can't do that. Whatever my addiction is, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why I have to, I think step two says, I should know all these, but I don't. Step two says, I want to be released from my insanity, and that's where the God component always comes back to me.
Yeah.
Because if you're a real human, you're going to have those thoughts.
Yeah.
And that was realized with my sister. She had those thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's so desperate that you go to the end. Shame.
Mm-hmm.
It is a shame because I do, and I think you believe that life is a gift. We have a gift.
Yeah.
And every day we unwrap that gift a little bit more until the end, and God knows when the end is, but he still wants me to keep unwrapping.
Yeah.
Because there's new jewels and new treasures to be discovered every day. There is.
Yeah.
Even in the bad days.
Did you ever feel like guilt over that?
Over that, I think I've asked myself that. Could I have done more? My excuse, I'll use this. Excuse my expression, I was too damn caught up in my own life and my own stupidity to know better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a kid. I was drinking. I was a hellion.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, she'll be okay. She'll be okay.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. Yeah, it was a shame.
Even years later, do you feel?
I don't feel guilt.
Okay.
I feel if I was now, me now, I could help. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know better.
You didn't see.
I didn't see it. I was too dumb. I was too stupid.
Well, and I think in fairness though too, a lot of people hide it well.
And my sister, didn't hide it. She didn't hide it. She was struggling.
Yeah.
She had repeated attempts.
Yeah.
And I know my mom and dad struggled. Mm-hmm. It was terrible. And the day it happened, to see my mom when my dad and I had to tell her.
Yeah.
It was one of the worst days of my life.
Yeah.
The pain. My mother never got over it.
Yeah.
Never. Nope. Just pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it's I think on my dad's side, there's 2 or 3 of his uncles that committed suicide.
Wow.
And I know that for my dad, I mean, it's a nice thought, but I don't think you should tell your children this. I don't know how old I was when he said something about, because as a kid, I think I was like 6 years old or 5 years old the first time he checked himself in on Suicide Watch. And then, I don't know if there was another time, but there was definitely a time when I was a teenager, like 16 or something, that he checked himself in. But at some point as a kid, I think he had said that, the only thing that kept him from offing himself was me and Emily, me and my sister.
Yeah.
Which, okay, but that's also a lot of weight. That's a lot of responsibility on like 11-year-old boy thinking like I'm the only thing keeping my dad alive.
Yeah, I know. That's rough.
So it's always been something, that I'm not a stranger to. And then when you get into conversations with people, and I think, having gone through that, because, this kind of ties back to all of this stuff, and this is something I truly believe, is that we go through certain things to equip ourselves,
yes, we do.
To help other people in those situations, or to be able to reach out in ways that other people can't. I can talk about certain things because I've experienced them firsthand. I can't talk about childbirth because I've never had it. I'm not a woman. I've never born a child, and I'm also childless, just in general. But I can talk about mental illness. I can talk about suicide and dark thoughts and self-hatred and all of those sort of things, because that's stuff, and and that's a tough thing for me too to talk about, especially with Christians, because they can sometimes get that perspective of like, well, you're saved now, you shouldn't have that stuff. Well, I mean, I would say in this situation, you're the prodigal son. I'm the one that stayed home.
Yeah.
You ran out. You spent the money. You had all the fun. You came back and you're like, oh, I'll just be a servant. And I'm the one that's like, my story, I didn't really go out there and do that kind of stuff.
You didn't?
To that extent.
Really?
I mean, I was in the restaurant business. So I would go out and drink.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily do it like every night or definitely not until, 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, I was married at 20.
Yeah.
So I think, I definitely think that God sent her at a certain time to kind of keep me more even keeled, to keep me more on a good path instead of a path of destruction. But it can be easy whenever you are the son that sits at home to not understand grace as much or understand grace for you or to not have those big moments. You see somebody get saved and their face is full of joy and they're all kinds of fire. But if you're the son that stayed home, it's kind of been this, your journey is longer. Sometimes things don't happen. No. You think it's, I'm a Christian now, everything's going to be great, or, things are working out for you. And it's just, I'm Moses in the desert wandering for 40 years. Where's my burning bush? I want answers from God.
So when did you have a Christ experience?
Well, I would tie back. So let's go journey. You're flipping the tables on me. Yeah. Now I'm talking on my own podcast. I'm not going to listen to this. I would say first thing, I remember taking like my first communion. Yeah. And I remember Dad explaining it to me. No. Reformed United Church of Christ.
Okay. Yeah.
So, a little more high church. Right. But I have always had the feeling of God being with me and Him being my friend. And I think sometimes there's two sides of it. We as adults can overcomplicate the God-person relationship. Yes. We can overcomplicate salvation. On the flip side, I think children can sometimes not fully understand those concepts as well. Yeah. But then it's like, that doesn't mean it has to be a bad thing. But sometimes I think this is what happens with Catholics. I don't mean to pick on Catholics, but the concepts are all there, but they're not taught in that way. So like whenever I had the first communion, and I had this little glass of juice, because in our church it was whenever you went through the communion class. After that, you could partake. Right. And so I remember like looking at that cup of juice and thinking about Christ dying for my sins. Mm-hmm. Now, did I understand the full breadth of all of that? Maybe not. But I remember that very specifically, and I've always had, these feelings. But then there's difficulty too, because I was there was some sort of Christian class. I can't remember, but we would get pulled out for it. Me and my sister, I think she went too, and we would ride in a van with this mom and some of the other kids down to a local church, and we would have like Christian teaching, and it was like once a week for like 2 hours out of a Tuesday or something. And at the end of it, she would always say about, like, is Jesus in your heart? Is Jesus in your heart? And sometimes I would feel bad as if, like, well, what does that mean? I mean, I think he is. But it's every week, and it's the same kids. Yeah. So is he not in my heart? Yeah. And, you're 7 years old. What's that mean? Is he in my heart?
That's a big question.
So that had kind of always, kind of rubbed me a certain way. Then there was a church camp, a summer church camp, 7th grade. I got into some trouble or did some kind of bad things, and I remember very much crying out for forgiveness at that time and having some, some wrestling with God. I talk to God all the time. I look back on it and think that He's always been my friend. He's always been there. I just maybe didn't always know it as that. So, because I think one of the pivotal moments for me as an adult, I was, go to college. You're exposed to all kinds of new things. So
Where'd you go?
Duquesne.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good school.
Good Catholic school.
Yeah, it is good school.
Yeah.
I applied there. They didn't accept me.
Oh, yeah? That's okay. I applied at CMU. They didn't accept me. Rejection. That's a whole other podcast.
Me too. I did CMU too. I said no thanks.
But I was involved with a campus ministry there that was non-denominational. And then there was a Bible study group, and I got in close with these two guys. And at some point, the one guy was telling me about the writings of A.A. Allen. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know of A.A. Allen, but he had done some revival, Pentecostal sort of stuff. I want to say like the turn of the 20th century, tents and stuff. And his premise was that you don't actually have the Holy Spirit dwelling within you unless you speak in tongues, unless there's an outer manifestation of that.
Right.
I had never come across that before, and I was, kind of getting swept up in everything that, these are good guys. I'm enjoying the Crossroads fellowship, all this kind of stuff. And so that one really hit me, and then I'm starting to think, maybe I'm not really saved.
Yeah.
Boy, that's a dark road to go down. I did not like that portion of that year at school.
Yeah. They're sending you some heresy there.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
It's out there. And if
I know it is.
And if you've never come across it.
I know.
And, so I think, so I kind of struggled through some different stuff. And thankfully, I was playing at a church. I did have some older counsel. And, sometimes counsel can make you feel a little bit better about some of this stuff, but it doesn't always necessarily really lock in. I went to Tres Dias weekend, which is like a non-denominational ecumenical weekend retreat sort of thing. And that was very powerful. And there were instances where I felt the Spirit in a very physical manifestation sort of way. But of course, my scientific and analytic mind is like, nah, you're breathing heavy or your blood pressure's rising.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking, well, maybe the Spirit is causing my blood pressure to rise or is causing me to breathe. I mean, if the spiritual truths are deeper and beyond what we actually know, then spiritual truths can, and learning that too is that we're not separate. There's not body and spirit is two different things.
It's all me.
It's all together. So it's like, oh, okay. And so just a very powerful weekend there. Felt God's love in so many deeper ways. But I think they're really locking in that I am saved. I've always been saved. That, the times that I thought that I was like talking to myself, I was really just talking to God.
That's right.
And that he's always been there. And so it does make for a different journey, I suppose. Because, being almost 40 now, I think I probably have had a lot more life experience / wisdom, everything else in my life than a lot of other people my age.
You are wise beyond your years.
Well, so then it puts me in this weird perspective of seeing other people my age going through or dealing with certain stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's old.
You've already been there.
Like me and Jesus, we're old friends, like real old friends. He saw me through, a lot of dark times. I think one I really remember as a kid, my grandfather, I was really close to him. And he died when I was like 11 or 12. And he died from cancer. And what sucks about that, and especially at that time, because I don't think even chemo, like this was the 90s.
Yeah.
So the chemo wasn't really a thing, or it wasn't as broadly done. At some point, he started just doing like herbal remedies, and the community's getting together, praying for him for 2 solid years, just praying and praying and praying. And I remember being outside one time. It was a cold, probably January, and I'm just screaming up at the sky, like, "Why are you doing this? Why would you do this? We are all praying. We all have faith that you can heal him, but you're not going to do it."
Yep.
And then seeing him slowly fade out of existence, because it was that last Christmas. He was kind of rough. He started swelling up. It had moved to his brain. And then after we had Christmas as a family, we turned the dining room into a care suite for him. And then it was by the end of that January that he had passed. And I still have thoughts and memories of seeing him as that shell of a man as he was dying throughout that month. And that's I don't know.
Rough.
Yeah, it's not great.
Rough.
It's not great to see somebody die and suffer like that, but. Yeah, so I think that's that sometimes can be a tough thing too, is reconciling bad things that happen. Again, heresies that are being perpetuated. Mm-hmm. If you pray in certain way, God's not your genie. Heresies. You don't rub a lamp and say, "Oh, make my life good." There can be times where you cry out, and it's like life it's not going to happen this way.
Life is hard. Jesus even promised us that. In the world, you'll have tribulation.
It's going to be tough, guys.
I know. It's what he said. Good luck. Why? So those are character builders, I guess. Yeah. Easy to say. My wife and I were talking about tough times and just the analogy of, you're a Pittsburgh steel guy, but steel has to be fired all the time in order to be strengthened. Yeah. Just like us. We have to be fired to make us strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking about my wife, the little story about her. so you talk about listening to God. I know she has her own little spiritual angel, whatever you want to call it, but God's always talking to her.
Yeah.
But I remember when we met our son-in-law, and we were giving him the 10th degree one time. We took him for a walk with our daughter, when they were dating. They're now married. They're like 13, 14 years married. But I remember we were just walking, and she said to Ryan, she says, were you ever a Mormon? And I'm looking at her and said, what are you asking him that for? And you know what? He was a Mormon.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, my wife, you can't get anything over on her. God talks to her. Just different things she's done through the 44 years we've been married. Yeah. You can't get anything over on her.
I think I should have her on the podcast.
Yeah, you should have her. She could talk.
She has some good stories, too.
Yeah, she does have lots of stories. Yeah. The one more about her when she worked at Burger Chef, little burger place. That's where I met her. Okay. Because she was my customer. But I remember she said the gas water tank wasn't working. And it was at night, everybody wanted to go home, and they're trying to light the thing. It wouldn't work. Yeah. And she said, God told me, you tell them God can light this. Huh. And she says, I ain't telling them that. These are guys. They know what they're doing. And she said, I told them. I said, you do this one more time, God will light it. Yeah. And it lit. Yeah. And the one boss said to her, what are you jinxing us for? It's like, what are you talking about jinxing you? Yeah. God told me it's going to light it and it lit. Yeah. But yeah, boy, she said like walking out on a limb like that. Yeah. But she could tell you stories. You could interview her.
I was going to say, we'll have to do a podcast. I think you and I will have to do another podcast. Yeah, I think we only like kind of touched on one.
Okay, yeah, we got to go soon. Yeah. But one more about stories, and this is the macabre story, M-A-C-R-B, whatever you say. Yeah. How do you say that word? Your words.
Macabre, yeah.
But talking about suicide, and my sister died, and a little humor here. We were at the funeral reception, and my brother was there, and we're eating. You have the meal. Yeah. And I never forget. I never forget. We're having baked potatoes or something. And my brother's saying, "I hate sour cream," and as he's saying it, he's dumping sour cream on his potato. To me, it just struck me as so funny. Yeah. And he's slopping. I can't stand sour cream. Yeah. Things that strike you as funny. Okay. Yeah. So, I had to say that.
Well, that's great, though. That's maybe we should just end on that one. I was going to ask you about what are one of your favorite sayings or messages of hope, but I like that story instead. Let's land with that one because it's you go through a tragic time. Yeah. Laughter is God's gift.
It is.
And especially in a really tragic time. I know. The most absurd stuff actually makes you laugh. Yeah. Like, you guys wouldn't have been laughing about that in any other instance, but because you're in that grief. Yep. It's such a core thing that, that's a great gift from God to.
I don't think anybody else caught it except him and I. Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate talking.
Yeah, you too. This was good. So we'll see if we can have you back on here.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, put my wife and I on, but I wouldn't say anything. See, these are all the talking.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks for stopping by today. There's always a seat at the kitchen table and another story to tell. If you have a story to tell, I'd love to hear from you. Please send me a message. And also subscribe to the channel to look for more episodes, anecdotes, and information. Talk to you next time and have a great day.